Welcome to the Sports Profession Podcast. I'm your host, Hutton Jackson. Today I'm joined by a fellow DeSales University alum, sports reporter, and friend, Adam Zielonka. Adam is a current free agent sports reporter who has spent nearly 3 years with the Washington Times and covered the Washington Capitals 2018 Stanley Cup run, Washington Mystics 2019 WNBA Championship, and Washington Nationals 2019 World Series win. Adam, thanks for joining me on this podcast.
Hutton, thank you. I'm so honored. And you told me before I'm the first guest. I'm really honored.
You are the first guest. I'm excited to kind of, again, bring this podcast to life. It's going to be me kind of conversing with, sports professionals like yourself on how you got into the industry, any advice you have for other people trying to break into the industry, and just, kind of to sit back and talk some sports and, kind of give people an inside look on what we do as sports professionals. So I appreciate you joining me. And for many that don't know, Adam and I go back to our time at DeSales. We both studied communications, graduated in 2016, wrote for the school newspaper. And I have to tell you, Adam, I have a funny story is when I first was looking at DeSales and I first was talking to people at the newspaper, I was like, well, I was an editor-in-chief of my high school newspaper. Maybe, I'll work my way up, be editor-in-chief of the eventual college newspaper. And then I met you freshman year and we were both, ambitious and stuff, but you were definitely more ambitious than me. And I remember thinking, all right, Adam's got the editor-in-chief thing in the bag, but I'm happy to be along for the ride. And I think we did a great job with the newspaper, taking it, from our freshman year to our senior year, me as the online editor. And I think we made a pretty good team, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. I didn't even know that. I didn't know that you had your sights on editor.
It was very short-lived because I knew I was like, I don't have the time. Adam is like all into it. And I think it was great for both of us. Me kind of growing the online presence a little bit and you run the show as editor-in-chief. I thought we did really great things with that. I
think so too. That's the thing I was going to say. Like, you had lacrosse and you had a couple other things. It's not that I did no other activities while at DeSales, but I definitely made the newspaper my primary objective and my primary focus outside of classwork. And sometimes, honestly, more important than classwork.
Yeah, well, and I think you did a great job. And I think it shows, too, that sometimes those secondary things are actually not more important, I'd say, than, our studies. But, you want to be able to show, like, that you can actually – walk the walk, talk the talk. Anybody can take classes, but you actually showed, hey, I can build a newspaper. You wrote for a New York Jet Fuel sports blog as well during your time there. So tell me a little bit about how you first got interested in, writing on sports, when you started writing for New York Jet Fuel and, kind of your love for sports journalism. When did it kind of come to be?
Yeah, absolutely. It was even before college. And I had it in my head at a very early age, not very early, but I'd say by 10 or 11 years old, with the regularity that I would watch Around the Horn and Pardon the Interruption on ESPN, and thinking, these are sports writers. They get to go cover sports live, football, anything you could think of. And then also, they've got this side gig just being on television. It just looked like the most perfect lifestyle. It's like, I could be around sports. I knew from an early age I was not going to be athletic enough to compete in sports at a high level, pretty much. So I thought, okay, this would be fun to do. And I never really had any secondary ambitions because I was always kind of good in school, and I started writing and I started developing like my talents as a writer. I would say it's a mixture of talent and practice. Really, practice is obviously super important in that. And then, so I also in high school was editor-in-chief of our newspaper. It only came out, I think, every quarter. So that wasn't the biggest responsibility. But then, I went to DeSales too with this in mind, like, okay, so we're Division III, but we've got pretty much everything that's not football. I can, what do you want me to cover? Like I was Amanda Gilmore was our first editor-in-chief. I really wanted to be a sports reporter. And now that I'm thinking about it, I had 3 sports articles in our first edition of our freshman year. I don't remember what the sports were, but I think it was 3, and I think they were all sports. I want to say volleyball had to have been one of them. That's a fall sport. Anyway, there's a lot we can cover in this podcast, and advice I would give people. I don't want to tell people like all I did was tunnel vision on one thing, tunnel vision on sports, because you really do need to have an open mind, and be a yes man or a yes woman, and try a lot of different things that come your way. I was never actually even the sports editor because I wanted to be, and they said, it would look better on your resume to be the news editor. It was at the time, it was basically the number 2 in command with Kate Bortz at the top. And what were you? I'm trying to remember. Arts and entertainment.
I was arts and entertainment,
Yeah.
and then I was online, and I think I wore both hats. I think senior year, but
Yeah.
and I gotta say too, you really pushed the envelope. I think too, because traditionally we were writing just articles for the newspaper, would come out in the print form, and that would be it. And then together we kind of like, all right, let's build this online presence a little bit. Yeah. Let's put some video content out that we worked on. Remember, the name escapes me, but we interviewed that one DeSales student who did the skeet shooting and was, qualified for the Olympics. I think that was a great piece that we kind of did, I got our feet wet a little bit in the journalism side of things, as well as being on camera and stuff. So
I'm really glad you accompanied me that day and agreed to do it. You were the one on camera. I was shooting the video, and I edited it later. That was never my number one skill or talent. Her name, by the way, I remember, is Morgan Kraft. She went to Rio in 2016 representing the USA, and at the same time had started studying at the PA program at DeSales. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a fun time. We drove out to, it was like not Scranton, but it was pretty far up in the.
I think it was like Stroudsburg or something. Yeah.
Yeah, Stroudsburg. That's right.
But we got to shoot the skeets too. We didn't think we were gonna be doing that either. That was good. Yeah, and tell me a little bit too about again writing for the New York Jet Fuel a little bit, because that was kind of a side project that you did as well while you were in college. And I think that's another thing. Like we mentioned how sometimes doing things on the side can sometimes be just as valuable, if not more valuable, because it shows you're taking the initiative. You're putting yourself out there and kind of, again, honing that craft that you said. It's not just talent, it's also practice. So tell me a little bit about how you started writing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Something I meant to say before too, it reminds me of the way I put it to people when I talk to people now is, your school is important. You have to pass your classes, but truthfully, whether you get a 2.5 versus a 3.5 GPA won't be relevant in 3 years out of college. What's relevant is going to be your internship experience, your other stuff on the side. You have to be writing for your student newspaper. For instance, if you're talking like, journalism, and I'm sure other people on your podcast might say similar stuff, and they might not all be in the journalism sector of it, but you need to actually start doing the work itself and showing you can do it, whether that's internships, blogging. So with Jet Fuel, and I think Matt Barbado might be a fun guest for you to have. I should introduce the two of you to each other. Matt Barbado invited me to write for his website at the time. It was called New York Jet Fuel, covering the New York Jets, because he knew I was a fan of the Jets from like my social media posts. I forget if he was born in New York. He lives in Chicago and has for a while, but he was a big Jets fan. So it was him. He invited Max Marcilla, who I ended up later meeting at Maryland, because he went to Maryland. He's a little younger than me. The time that I was there, and he brought me on, and he wanted to pay us, but at the time, like, we had to figure out how to actually monetize the posts and at first. So I was just kind of writing a couple blog posts a week on the side. If it was the off season, we were talking about like draft preview stuff, free agency, and then training camp preview pretty much right away. I mean, training camp comes up in July. There's only a little bit of a dead period in the NFL season, or off season, I should say. That's like May and June. Not much is going on. And then during the season, we would be watching the game, following the team, trying to cover them in the sense of like, we can't be at the press conferences, but you see, it was hardly. It's not that it was unique, because you'll see fan-sided blogs on SB Nation. I think that stands for Sports Blog Nation, or it originally did, right? So I mean, it was really fun, because we would expand too. We started doing eventually some stuff like podcasts. We did a little podcast series for a while. It was the three of us would get on before Zoom, whatever we would use at the time, Skype, I guess, or Google Hangouts, something like that. I loved it. It was a great time. I don't regret any of that. Even if it was like one more thing on the to-do list, like, well, I have to write that thing for Jet Fuel tomorrow. Just knowing like that was never a bother to me. It was always fun. That kind of just confirmed in my mind, like, I'm doing what I want to do for a living. It's writing about sports, professional or what have you, whether it was covering a Jets game on a Monday night, or writing about a volleyball player at DeSales. It was all just, it was like the beginning of my dreams coming true a little bit. You know what I mean? Like it was right at the beginning. I was like, okay, I'm not doing it for a job yet, but it certainly was. It's good practice, first of all, to what you were saying before. We all need to get that practice in at an early age. And I knew at the same time, I was like, I'm getting a taste of it. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm getting a taste of it now, and it's gonna I know I'm on the right track in my life.
Yeah, and you were kind of finding your passion. And I think it's important too, what you mentioned is that a lot of people don't realize, like, you're not going to be making money right away. And that's kind of, just the downfall of the industry. But that's the fact of the matter. But it's very easy to kind of just break in if you just start writing. I mean, I wrote for Fansided a little bit for more lacrosse stuff, but I can't tell you how easy it was just to, submit an application and then start writing. Because that's, the hardest part is they're always looking for writers for those like fan sites. And if you're interested in that, like, that's, I think the best way is, you're not going to get paid. Actually, Fansided is starting to do some rev sharing. It's very minimal. It depends on your clicks, but there is something there, at least there's potential there. But again, it's just, building that brand. Again, you mentioned too, like, you were writing, but it probably opened up the doors to other things. I know just from us starting Pro Lacrosse Talk, I wish I would have started it sooner, because now I'm able to talk to these players, and, that's a little bit easier in lacrosse. Lacrosse is a much smaller professional sport. But, you kind of open up the doors to, I guess, at least engage with other people in the industry. So I can't recommend that enough. And then, that eventually you found your passion, and it took you to, University of Maryland, College Park's Merrill College of Journalism. You got to be taught by the likes of, Kevin Blackenstone, who you said you were watching on Around the Horn. So to talk to me a little bit about what led you to Maryland, and then, getting to meet him and going through that program there.
That's exactly right. That's a connection. I didn't even remember I was pointing that out implicitly, but yeah, Blackenstone was absolutely a panelist on Around the Horn for going back into the early years of that show, and Washington Post columnist. I think he went to a website called AOL Fan House for a little while. So now he writes, just if people don't know who we're talking about, now he writes occasional columns for the Washington Post on sports, usually sports as they intersect with race or culture and things like that. But he has, for more than 10 years now, I guess, been also a professor at the University of Maryland. Like you said, it's the Merrill College of Journalism. Really glad I went there after DeSales, because as nice as DeSales was, there was no actual journalism major, and we had 2 journalism classes. One was taught by Professor Julian McKnight, who we all love. The other by Carl Babby. And so, it was just 2 classes, and I thought, I feel like there's a lot more out there. I need to, just make sure I get under my belt and actually indoctrinate's not the right word, but just surround myself kind of with the education aspect of it before I truly go out there. So I got into the Maryland Graduate School. So grateful that I took that turn in my life too. It brought me down here. I've lived here for about 4 years now. So at the same time, and so Kevin Blackstone teaches there. Another one who just retired, big name, George Solomon, who for multiple decades was sports editor of the Washington Post. So you get those connections, you get into a major media market, and if sports isn't your thing, but politics is, heck, I mean, you're right by Washington, D.C., and there's so many opportunities I can't even go down the list right now. So at the same time, I thought, okay, let me see how can I start making money with what I already have? I have a bachelor's degree. Let me see if I could freelance or something, start stringing or something, like high school sports, for instance. So I reached out to a couple of papers in this area, and I got a response back from the Capital Gazette in Annapolis. The sports editor at the time, or one of the sports editors, Bob, he let me, he said, you can interview for a part-time job if you want. We need one more part-time guy. So what I did, to paint the picture, it was like during my first semester at Maryland, I was taking classes during the day. I think 3 days a week I had class. And I also tried a little bit writing for their student newspaper just because I could, and it was out there, and they even actually paid at that student newspaper. Oh, wow. Can you imagine?
Yeah,
it was like $40 a month or something.
Written a lot more for DeSales if I would have been paid, but
yeah, I think a lot of people probably would.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, then so I'd be done with class at a certain hour, and then I'd go to Annapolis, maybe 30-minute drive east from College Park. And I started out, I wasn't even really writing anything with my name on it at the Capital Gazette. As a part-time sports clerk, I think would be the proper term for it. You're at the desk, you're waiting for the phone to ring because like the local high school coaches are calling in the field hockey scores, the lacrosse scores, depending on the season. I guess the fall would be volleyball, field hockey, soccer, football. That's really what you're looking at. And not glamorous at all, but I was so happy to do it because it opened every step you take. And maybe this could be a takeaway for your listeners who are just starting to get into this. Maybe they're at a certain age, like college age. Every step you take, every door you open is almost inevitably going to lead to another. It's never, you're not really ever going to hit dead ends. Even if you feel like you're in a dead end job, that's not necessarily true because you're meeting new people. And those people might be impressed with your work and remember you 5 years down the line, or even a lot sooner than that. Who knows? With the Capital Gazette, does it sound glamorous? Do people want to enter the journalism industry by answering calls and taking down a girls' soccer score? Okay, it was 3-2. What was the score at the half? Who had the goals? Can you spell that last name for me again? It's kind of tedious. It was a little bit tedious, but I don't totally recommend the fast track of like, if I blog for that, Dallas Cowboys site or New York Jets site, that'll get me straight to a newspaper. Not really. But if you can get in the way I did, it's like this. It's like it's not one size fits all, but there's something to be said for the coming up from the bottom, coming up from the newsroom, answering the phone, tracking down stuff like old school journalism style, even if it's something like high school sports scores, because then eventually, and I should wrap myself back around to the story. Then they started letting me write, and then I got to cover games in person or write features about individual coaches or athletes in the county. It was high school stuff, but then it was high school and then some Navy sports, because that's Annapolis too, obviously, quite well, with the military background. And I ended up, and that it was a terrific addition to my resume. And it was something that I was able to do part-time while also being a student. I worked no more than 20 hours a week at most, and got paid, and you got your byline in the newspaper. It was great.
No, and that's awesome. And I think it's important for people to recognize too, like, again, you put in the work and, it will open up doors, like you said, because a lot of it, it's not always glamorous, stuff that we do in the sports industry. And a lot of it is behind the scenes. But I know my uncle, who worked at the Capital Gazette at the time, he's now with the Baltimore Sun, but he always commended you for your hard work. And I think, there's a lot of strong writers out there. You're always going to find strong writers, but you also have to be a strong worker as well. And if you're not putting in the hard work, you're not going to make it, and I think that's always an important thing too, is they can always find writers. They're always looking for hard workers though. So if you're somebody looking to break in, just be a hard worker, take on those less glamorous tasks that you mentioned. And it paid off for you because you ended up at the Washington Times upon graduating, and you got to cover some pretty good assignments. Your first one was the Washington Capitals 2018 Stanley Cup run, which me as a Caps fan was great to see. I know I saw you at one of the games. I went as a fan. You were there working. We got to meet for 2 minutes, I think. But tell me a little bit about, starting out at the Washington Times, getting your feet wet there, were you nervous? And then, going on that magical, run, again, you probably went into it thinking the Caps were going to have another early exit in the playoffs, like I probably did. But that wasn't the case. So talk to me a little bit about that, your first experiences with the Washington.
That's what they were known for at the time, right? Was never getting past the second round. It was a good 20 years since their last Cup final appearance, where they were swept by Detroit in '98, and Detroit was a dynasty at the time. So, it was a couple years in a row where they lost to the Penguins in the second round, and here it comes again, right? And even though so obviously I'm from New Jersey, I didn't grow up rooting for any Washington teams, but you go in and you don't root, but in the back of your head that like something special could happen. It would be nicer if they won than they lost. Actually, funny part of this is that my parents started watching hockey for the very first time when I started going. Now I'm blanking. The first round was Columbus. The second round was Pittsburgh, and then the conference final was Tampa. So Columbus, Pittsburgh, Tampa, Vegas, and I went for almost every one of those road games, and it was really lucky timing. There's something to be said for luck that I was assigned the Capitals and not, say, the Wizards at the same time. The Capitals, So what I'm saying with my parents is that, they started watching because they knew, okay, he's going on the road to cover this hockey series, and they really got into it. It was kind of funny. My mom especially really got into hockey at the time, and they kept, they became Capitals fans. And my dad prefers the Capitals now. Like he was never like a Devils fan in New Jersey or anything. So now he's just a Caps fan because he just jumped on the bandwagon at the right time, to be very
Yeah.
honest with you. I hope that doesn't ruffle any feathers of people who are anti-bandwagoners. But that happens when you get a magical run to a
Yeah, to the cup
championship.
final. Yeah, and it's funny because with DC is like, I moved to that area in 2005, and that's when Ovechkin was drafted. You had the lockout in 2004 or whatever, and then they really haven't been that bad, since then. So even me coming on as a fan and all the playoff woes and stuff, it's like, really I've been fortunate that the Capitals have been a good hockey team for a long time, as long as I can remember at least. But that, your luck, as you say, it didn't end there too. You were part of you got to cover the Mystics when they won the WNBA title, their first, and then the Nationals World Series as well this past fall. So tell me a little bit about that too, how awesome that was. I mean, the All-Star game was in DC as well. You really had a nice streak going, and I hope, your luck from coming to the DC area stays with DC sports for a long time. But tell us a little bit about that as well.
I don't know. I think it rubbed off, but I don't know if it's going to stick around if I'm piecing out of the DC area.
I hope it does. We'll see. Yeah, or wherever you end up going, hopefully you bring some good luck there, unless it's a rival.
And remind me, I saw you at the All-Star game, right?
We did. We met up at the All-Star game as well, and that I was going again as a fan. My dad was able to get tickets. It was funny. I worked at the network the night before, and I wasn't originally going to go, and I switched with shifts with a girl. She said, "Hey, I would like to take off Saturday. I saw you have off Saturday. Would you like to switch?" I was like, "Well, I'll work your shift Saturday if you can give me Tuesday off." And so I ended up driving down DC, going to the All-Star game, and then waking up really early Wednesday and going back to work. But it was a fun experience. And I know I forgot that we linked up there as well.
So I think the thing I want to say about this too is that it's fun to cover winners. I think that's probably obvious logic. But there never was a dull moment in those 2.5 years that I worked for the Washington Times, because even in between Capitals, Mystics, and Nationals winning their championships, there was the football team, if that's what we have to call them at the moment. That's what they call themselves.
Yeah.
And there was the three-ring circus at times of the Washington football team. Everything from them claiming Reuben Foster in November 2018, days after his second domestic violence arrest, I think at least second in his NFL career. I hope I'm remembering that right. 2019, in the middle of the Nationals playoff run, Jay Gruden was fired. 0-5. Bruce Allen at the podium. Bruce Allen says the culture is actually damn good. It's those things, like they kind of filled in between, like it wasn't just all winning teams and everything, but I bring it up because I think not only was there never a dull moment in those years, but I think I did some of my best work covering some of the failures here and there, especially, failures, or maybe we could say, embarrassments or distractions surrounding the football team. I got to go on a couple road games. I think they lost every game they played except at the Jaguars 2018, Jacksonville in December. At least it was Florida, slightly better weather. Yeah. But anyway, it was there was always something going on, because even in between pro sports, my boss at the time was interested in us figuring out to cover, the decline of high school football across America and locally, and participation going down year after year, and doing stories about things like that too. So I definitely want to continue a career of covering either college or professional sports at a high level. But there's always other things. You fill in the gaps there. And there's always sports stories where you might not even expect to find them. And keeping an open mind about all of those things certainly is important. Like I said a little bit before, you just got to be a yes man. That's something I've always felt. And that's not infinite. I think there's a line to draw. You don't have to say yes to everything, but you should be open to saying yes to anything. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, no, and I think that's good advice for people too. It's, don't be afraid to take on that hard story. I mean, even the Nationals were in a really bad slump and turned it around too, because you don't know what's going to be at the end of the road. And sometimes the best stories are those comeback stories. We all enjoy a good comeback story, right? So you have to be there for the low in order to reach the high. So I think that's a really good point. Speaking of lows too, I have to ask what you thought of the Capitals' early exit, this Stanley Cup finals, or this Stanley Cup playoffs. Obviously have my opinions, but what did
Oh,
you
yeah.
see from that really wasn't working?
Wait, Hutton, I don't want to interrupt your flow or anything, but what you were saying before about the Nationals, were you saying, to quote Davey Martinez, that bumpy roads lead to beautiful places, or often?
I might as well have said that.
I
Yeah.
didn't butcher the
No,
quote.
and I think their quote was, go 1-0 every day. I remember him saying that too.
How many times we heard that?
Yeah, and they did that, but yeah, no, and
Oh, okay, Capitals. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. No, it's all discussion. Yeah, the Capitals. What's up with them, man? I mean, I watch as often as I can. You probably watch even more, having to cover them. What's their deal these past 2 years?
1 year getting eliminated in the first round, coming off the Stanley Cup, not having Trotz there anymore, moving a couple pieces around. Losing the first round 1 year is what I'm trying to say, is kind of acceptable. It's kind of like, okay, there is such a thing as a championship hangover in hockey and other sports, and this is a new coach, gave them a little more time.
And the Canes didn't go far too, so it's the Canes were a good team last year.
They were, yeah. This year it was a much starker contrast because you've got Barry Trotz on that other bench for the Islanders, and you had so much more time. I think what the common thinking among me and my peers covering the Capitals was this break was going to help them because they were not a good team in February, early March. They got a couple, I guess they beat the Penguins at one point pretty good, but they were ultimately really slumping. You can even stretch that back to January, but I point out February is a pretty bad month for them. So the fact that the COVID pause happened and kind of disrupted the momentum, you'd think possibly it would disrupt the momentum of the best teams and maybe give a hand to the most struggling teams, and the Capitals fit the latter category. We thought, hey, you know what? They could probably go kind of far. Maybe not the best team in the Eastern Conference, but who knows? You win one series and get something cooking, and who knows? And instead, they only won one game that whole time. It was a 2-1 win over the Bruins, and the Bruins kind of looked just like the Capitals in terms of being flat. But then to come out not just flat, but to come out oftentimes non-competitive against Trotz and the Islanders, and you combine that with losing in the first round of the 2019 playoffs, only now it's worse. It's just a 5-game series, could have been a sweep at the hands of your old coach. Guys like, I think, Jacob Vrana, I think he's gone 2 straight playoffs without a single point.
Yeah.
That's not what he looked almost heroic in 2018. He came up sometimes.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I'm saying get rid of Vrana. Because you got to see. I mean, maybe you hit reset. Maybe you've got a new goalie situation if there's no Holtby. But yeah, they can't continue to play like that with not only the talent they've got on the roster, but the shrinking championship window because Oshie is old, Ovechkin is old, Backstrom is old, etc.
No, you're absolutely right, and the shelf life for these coaches has really started to decrease. I mean, this past season you had a lot go. I mean, Gerard Gallant, I think, is a prime example. Takes his team all the way. Then the Golden Knights in their first season, and their third season gets fired. I think prematurely. I don't think he deserved to get the axe. They obviously have been playing well with DeBoer as well, but I think you're right there. And just again, we can't overlook the injuries to Backstrom in this series, and then Carlson was definitely not healthy.
Right.
But even throughout the year, there was a few breakdowns that I did with EJ Radick, and we're like, let's take a look at Carlson. And, we want to say Johnny for Norris and everything, but there's some times he just didn't look good on defense. He overplayed. I mean, he let that goal pretty much go in on the overtime loss to the Islanders in Game 3. And like you said, the window's just closing, and it's a shame that, I really want Ovi to get another one. It's great he got over the hump. He got that one, but this team deserves to win more, and it's just disappointing to see them get out. But enough of my fandom a little bit. We're going to shift gears from your career. We're going to do a segment I like to call Seventh Inning Stretch. And Seventh Inning Stretch, I'm going to ask you 7 questions, and these are more from a fan perspective, I guess you could say, than, actually a career. So the first one I'll start off with is, what is your favorite sport to watch? You've obviously covered a lot of different sports. But what's your favorite sport to watch?
I still go with football. Football was always my first love early on. I love watching so many other sports too, but football's number one there.
Awesome. And then what's your favorite player to interview or cover that you've kind of covered during your career?
Gut reaction right now, I'm saying TJ Oshie because he was always very easy to talk to. He's happy to give you some time. If you're working on something maybe even a little longer, like a longer feature and I want to do a longer interview with him, he's totally cool with it. He's really good with the media. So he's who comes to mind right now.
Awesome. And what's your favorite player just to watch in general?
My favorite player, my favorite athlete growing up was Curtis Martin, because I was a Jets fan and he was Hall of Famer in his prime, and he would be sick sometimes. Currently, God. Hard not to say Damian Lillard, the way he's been playing this postseason.
Dame's been going off, yeah.
Yeah, Dame Dollar.
Sure. And then favorite season of a team all time. So what I mean by that is, for me, one of the top teams that I loved watching are the 2018 Capitals or like the 2012 Ravens. What's one of your favorite teams that you've watched? Like their season. What is your favorite season from a team? Whether it be the Jets. Yeah,
because I'm defaulting to like Jets knowledge for this, and it's not like they've had any good seasons in recent memory, but 2010 was kind of special because they had Rex Ryan and Mark Sanchez, first-year coach and a rookie quarterback, all the way to the AFC Championship game. Those are the best memories I've got as a Jets fan. So I want to say 2010 Jets for personal reasons.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then what's been your favorite sports book that you've read? Whether it be, a bio or it can even be like, on the industry as a whole.
What I really, a long time ago, I read Rich Eisen's memoir. It was really interesting. Jim Nance's too, now that I think about it. I don't know. I'm in the middle of reading A Season on the Brink by John Feinstein.
Okay.
About Indiana basketball in like 86. And that's interesting. And let me see. Yeah, it's tough to pick out one. I hope it's going to be one of those things where I come up with the perfect answer when we're done recording.
I'll go. Yeah, no, it makes sense. That sometimes happens to people. But no, those are all great books for people to check out. And what's your favorite sports moment as a fan?
Bart Scott, going back to the Jets when they were good. Bart Scott going, can't wait.
That's a classic.
That's one right now. Still,
I still love posting.
And they went and lost to the Steelers.
Yeah, but I still love posting that GIF. Former Raven also. I was sad to see him go, but I pulled for Rex Ryan a little bit there until we started to come to blows. And then I was like less of a Jets, fan when it started to be Ravens versus Jets, competing for those wild card spots and stuff. That was a good era. And then
I thought of a second one. Not a whole lot of Sergio Garcia fans in the world. I know he's got kind of an attitude, but he was my favorite golfer when I was a little kid because I thought his name was cool, Sergio. I was like, I like it. When my dad was really introducing me to football and golf, were his number one and two, his two favorite sports. Mm-hmm. So I immediately kind of absorbed those, and they're my two favorite sports to watch. So when Garcia won the Masters a couple of years ago, and he'd for years been like supposedly the best golfer or current golfer who still have never accomplished winning a major. Mm-hmm. That just had I got a warm feeling inside for that. Maybe I understand he sometimes does some stuff that gets him some hate. I get that, but still, it felt nice to see that.
Well, I don't know if you know this. I'm gonna make you a little jealous because I was actually at that Masters when he won. I was down in Army training down at Fort Gordon in Georgia, which is in Augusta, and I had my dad come down, and we just got hospitality tickets. So we were just intending to just take in the atmosphere. Tickets are very, very expensive on the secondary market. It's funny, they really haven't gone up that much in price, but you have to know somebody to get a ticket to that event. And while we were there, the guy that was running the hospitality ticket, he started talking, and lacrosse is a small world. We found out that he played lacrosse, and his son coached my dad at the Navy prep school. So he told me, he's like, all right, come back Sunday in the afternoon. I'm going to get you in for like the final 2 or 3 hours. So he gets me in. I go in because you can only use the pass like a few times before they won't let you back in. So I go straight to the gift shop, buy as much merchandise as I can. I'm like, I don't know if I'm ever coming back to Augusta National again. And then I go for the final 4 or 5 pairs. I'm at the 18th hole. And it's funny, I didn't get to see the moment because everyone stands up out of their seats and you can't see anything. Mm-hmm. But I was there for it when Sergio won it. And it was, they had to do a playoff, I think, round at the end of that, and it was pretty exciting to see. Yeah. They had to repeat the 18th hole, I believe. Yeah. But I thought that's funny that you mentioned that moment because I happened to be there, just kind of taking it all in. Not a huge Sergio fan, not really a golf fan in general, but just being there was awesome. It's the Masters.
Right, I am a little jealous of that story. Yeah. Well, you've been places too. I guess I'm curious. What's your favorite sports moment, whether you've been there or in general?
That's tough. I really, with the Ravens winning it. Was a big moment. I was with all my relatives. We have an annual Super Bowl party that for some reason I never was able really to attend. And that was, I think our freshman year of college, and I was able to go that year. And just being with my family, watching them, get over the hump. I mean, I was devastated when they lost to the Patriots the year before. Billy Cundiff misses that field goal. Lee Evans could have held to that catch. They would have won regulation, all this stuff. And I think that moment was really special for me. And then the Capitals, winning it. I went to one of the games in the finals as a fan. And then, I was actually at my apartment that was empty, save for like a TV and a few other things. I was just moving in, and watching, Ovi lift that trophy, I mean, still gets me going every time. So those are probably my two favorite sports moments as a fan.
Freshman year of DeSales was a good time because we're in Pennsylvania. We're in Lehigh Valley, less than an hour north of Philadelphia. So we're surrounded by Eagles fans. And I still remember it was either week 1 or 2. The Eagles beat the Ravens. And you had a bet with, was it John?
I think so, yes. And,
so they lost, and you had to wear, I guess it was a Hutton Jackson jersey or something.
Yeah, it was something, yeah. And of course, the 4 years later, we don't make any bets and the Ravens win. But, it is what it is. Yeah, it was fun. We were kind of outliers being Jets-Ravens fans because you had Giants and Eagles seem to be the dominant ones there. A few Pittsburgh fans, you're always going to find them. But yeah, so that would probably be my moment. And then my final 7th question of the 7th-inning stretch for you is talk about your favorite sports moment as a fan. What's been your favorite sports moment as a professional? Being a sports reporter, is there anyone that sticks out? Whether it be like a big moment or even a small moment, like just talking to a certain player or writing a certain story.
And now I get to make you jealous a little bit because I think my favorite big sports moment in my professional career was just when the Capitals won that Game 5 in Vegas, and I saw so much of it up close, and being down on the ice for at least a half an hour of post-game interviews and big scrums with everybody and trying to talk to as many people as I could get to. First of all, I was a kid still, and I was a fish out of water, and I was brand new to the Capitals beat, so I didn't even really have a lot of people nobody was looking out for me necessarily. So I was just kind of floating back and forth, like, oh man, what should I do next? Where should I go? Make sure you don't slip on the ice. That would be the most embarrassing thing to do. But just to be, 10 feet away from Ovechkin when he's celebrating the best moment of his life, it's just really cool. There's no two ways about that.
No, that is awesome.
Another answer too for maybe more of a small or intimate moment. I don't know.
I'm definitely jealous though, for sure.
Oh yeah.
But we get to trade jealousy stories, and that's what makes sports great too, is the moments and where we are when we get to watch them and stuff as well. But that's the 7th-inning stretch. And then my final segment is the goal line, and that is again another kind of segment with 4 questions. But that's pretty much, this is going to be, where do you see your career going? What are the goals that you have? And then how, what is some advice you've gotten along the way, and what's advice you can impart on other people? I know you kind of gave some earlier this podcast, but 4 downs, first down, why did you embark in a career in sports?
Because I was drawn to to be really cliche, like the agony of defeat, the thrill of victory from an early age. I was a big sports fan and always thought it would be cool to be as close to that as possible, go to games, and not just as a fan. Like I had a fandom for the Jets, for instance, but not a whole other bunch. Like baseball, I never really picked between the Yankees and Mets. I kind of identified as a Yankees fan. So anyway, like I said before, seeing, you can write about this stuff and people respect you, and maybe you get on TV. That just seems like a peachy life. And that's what first inspired me to do it. I also want to say that, I have a deep respect now for journalism and its more important role in society than just game stories or coverage of Alex Ovechkin. So there's that obviously is baked into it too. But sports are such popular entertainment for so many people around the world, and they bring people together in so many important ways. That's why, we haven't phased out the sports section of newspapers as much these days. It's like, you don't need a newspaper to tell you who won the game yesterday, but you do want the coverage of the small and the large, broad kind of stories in the world of sports because they matter to so many people. And that's something I've always been invested in trying to do to the best of my ability.
No, I love that. I think that's a great answer.
Thank you.
Second down, what are your career goals and have you achieved any yet?
Yeah, I would say I've achieved the main goal of quote unquote making it to just this stage. I've done this professionally now for a few years and covered major professional championships as well as college too. Maryland basketball not too very long ago won a share of the Big Ten. That's another fun thing to be present for and cover a team that's coming back from something, whether it's the Capitals and the Nationals, for instance. So the main goal of just making it onto the scene, I've been now on the scene, and that's just still kind of surreal to me. I'm used to it, but also not used to it. Since I'm 26, I think you and I are like 8 days apart, right? Age-wise?
Yeah, I'm June 2nd, so.
Yeah, I'm the 10th. So.
Yeah, 10th. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
So I would say that there's so many larger things I can still accomplish. Hopefully, I'd love to be. It's the industry is not all about awards, but like if I could write something that someday gets published in the anthologies that come out every year of the best sports journalism of 2026, something like that. That would be a nice feather in my cap personally. That's a goal I would have. Just continuing to make a living out of doing this. It's something you got to keep working at, I think, and make sure you are surrounded by people that are going to help you become the best writer and reporter and professional and person, hopefully, that you can be. And that's what I'm hoping to look for now. And, again, I don't want to go too cliche, but, just continuing to be the best writer I can be is an overall career goal that you always chase. It's not like, oh, I made it. I'm 46 years old or whatever, and I've made it. And now I'm going to coast. I think some people coast. Rick Riley might be a good example of somebody who's coasted for a while. He was really damn good in the 90s. But anyway, I hope I never coast. I hope that I'm always chasing being a little bit better than yesterday.
No, I think that's awesome. Those are some great goals to have, and it's great that you think that you've achieved one of them as well in terms of making it as a sports reporter. Third down, you kind of answered it a little bit, but what's some advice that you've? Sorry, actually, I got to say that again. Third down. Now, you've obviously gone through several different papers as well as going through school. What is some advice you've received from another sports professional in the industry?
What I want to go with is something that John McNamara once told me in so many words. He was a sports writer and later an editor and a local editor for the Capital Gazette, covering Bowie, Maryland, too, for a while as both a reporter and editor. And he was one of the 5 victims of the shooting in 2018 at the Capital Gazette office. And I didn't feel like early on that I totally got along with him all the time, because I started trying to help him out in the summers when there were no high school sports to cover. It was the summer of 2017, I would say, then the year before the shooting, because then I was at the Times. And before even any of that, the piece of advice was essentially to let criticism roll off my back, because there was a disagreement once between me and one of the sports information directors, I was trying to say SIDs, at a local college who was claiming I misquoted somebody, and I didn't misquote somebody based on the recording of the audio I had. And there was this whole thing, and they had reached out to our editor, and it was an embarrassing incident. I was very ashamed. And John was very kind. He told me, his experiences with the same guy. It was surprisingly encouraging, because I had not talked to him all that much, but he had heard what happened, and he wanted to make sure that I was okay. So was it totally an advice thing? Maybe not, but the advice that's implied within that is that these things are going to happen. You're not perfect. Other people are not perfect. There's going to be conflict and stuff. And it wasn't even like it wasn't this big sit down or anything. It was just like a man reaching out to another man. He respected me, and I didn't realize it until that day that he respected me. So, to wrap it back to what I said before, letting it roll off your back. It's going to happen. There's going to be disagreements. You're going to make mistakes too. You're going to make mistakes, and you can't let those things weigh you down.
No, that's great. Like you said, not necessarily advice, but just somebody, vouching for you is so important in this industry too, and finding people that will be in your corner. And that leads me to my final fourth down question is, what is some advice you have for another young professional that's maybe looking to start in the industry, or is maybe, you know, has already broken into the industry, but is trying to, again, build their career up?
Definitely. So number one, what I said earlier a few times is say yes to just about anything early in your career. Nothing that you personally disagree with, or nothing that's exploitative. Nobody was like, you know, you should come work for me and write 10 articles a week and I'm not going to pay you. You know, there is, like I said before, it's not infinite. You can and should draw a line, and you should be wary of things like your mental health and your ethical beliefs. But, you know, be a yes man. If you're working at the sports desk and somebody asks you, if the editor of another department asks you, can you fill in for somebody today? Don't say no. Don't be a jerk about it. Just try it. Try it, because you're young, especially when you're young. You don't know. Maybe you end up falling in love with that thing. Maybe you don't want to believe that that's possible. But you know, don't just be too hyper focused on one thing that you ignore what's around you, because you also remember that if you help somebody out now, they might help you out later in a way that you can't imagine yet. That's definitely piece number one. Yes man or yes woman. You asked me earlier about some of my goals, and I didn't even scratch the surface now that I'm really thinking about it. Think about where you want to be in not just 5 years, but 10, 15 years, and really try to map out how you might be able to go about doing that. The industry, if you're talking about journalism or media in particular right now, it's not looking too good from a money position. That maybe should be 2A. It's like, don't get into this for the money. Maybe it can look glamorous, and there's stuff behind the scenes that's less than glamorous. But there's the glamorous things too. One of them is not like $150,000 salary, unless you're literally probably Joe Buck or any of the main top announcers. So anyway, I'm wandering a little bit now. Sorry, but so don't get into it for the money. But know really why you want to get into it. Have reasons, and let those reasons inform what your career goals are going to be. One last, okay, I'll leave it with this last piece. Talk to everybody. There was this great girl I knew named Caitlin Davis, and her talent as an intern for us in Washington Times last year was she could just talk to anybody, which A, is important if you want to get into journalism, but also B, is important for networking. And she was very good early on there, talking to, for instance, Alex Chappell of Masson. She wanted to have a sit down with Alex. Alex was gracious enough to meet with Caitlin. And, find those people that you might be able to connect with. It's good for networking. Obviously, in journalism, it's good to be able to be amiable with people and kind of get people to open up. Maybe this isn't advice so much as like talent, but like, don't be afraid to do that. Maybe should be the advice part of it. Because I can tell you, sometimes I've been afraid to make the connection that maybe I should be, like reach out like one more level. I'm shy, I'm introverted. I don't know if I should today, maybe another time. Don't do that. Don't let that be an obstacle within you. Be more like Caitlin, who will just talk to anybody in the clubhouse or the locker room that she can get near, or even the people who have jobs that she wanted to have later in her life.
No, I think that's great. Building those connections. It's so important. You know, we are out of human nature. We want those connections. We want those relationships. And I think, like you said, you know, trying to reach out to people and building those connections, being authentic is where you can really see your career start to grow. And, you know, even me and you know, we knew each other from DeSales. I wouldn't say we really stayed too good in touch, you know, after that, but I think, you know, we reconnected a little bit at these sporting events, just being both in the sports industry. And now, you know, on this podcast, it's been great to catch up with you. So I think that's important, like you said, just to build those connections. Don't be afraid to reach out to people. But Adam, this has been great. I really enjoyed talking to you. I enjoyed having you on. Where can people find you on social media?
Good question. Okay, I'm on Twitter. I'm not really on Instagram. I have a private Instagram I just use to follow like athletes for work reasons, but I don't post on there. But you can follow me on Twitter at Adam_Zielonka, and it's probably spelled on your screen right now. You can see Zielonka is my last name. And keep posted, I guess. I don't have any big thing, but like you said before, I'm a free agent right now. I wrote something for a local newspaper called the Washington City Paper about not Reuben Foster, Thomas Davis of Washington. Hopefully maybe doing some more little pieces of work like that, or for other outlets that I might be able to freelance for in the meantime. Got to keep looking for jobs, but you never know where life's going to ultimately take you. But yeah, that's my only social media plug right now. This podcast is going to be my big plug when it comes out, really.
No, absolutely. And we'll definitely include any notes in the show notes. Adam, again, enjoy having you on. Best of luck in your career. I'm sure someone will pick you up soon. I look forward to reading your next piece. You know, I always enjoyed reading your Capitals pieces, and even the ones that kind of, like you said, went beyond sports, you know, not just the coverage of the sport itself, but also the intersection of sports and culture, I think is also important. So I appreciate you coming on this podcast, being my first guest, and best of luck again in your future endeavors.
Thank you, Hutton. Thanks so much. I had a great time, and best of luck to you and to this new series. I think it's going to take off. It was really fun to be part of, especially those segments at the end.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate it.